In this video, we will be tasting and talking about batch 120 of the Eco Cha Tea Club, an aged oolong tea from Taiwan. Batch 120 of the Eco Cha Tea Club is an aged oolong tea from Taiwan. 120 editions in, that means 12 months a year times 10 years. We're reaching the completion of our 10th year of the Tea Club this month, and we are celebrating it with something that has significance in a time element sense. So we chose to share a batch of tea that I procured initially in 2013. It was a spring 2013 crop of tea. It was actually Tai Cha number 20, Yingxiang Oolong, that had not yet hit the market, as the story was told to me by the farmer that I bought it from. He somehow got saplings before they were publicly released, and he was the first one to plant a crop of this tea. And I had tasted it was only, I think it was like the second harvest of this plot of tea, the previous one being the winter crop before that, and it just made a really good Dongding oolong tea. The leaves were processed, the previous crop, the leaves were processed in a traditional fashion, significantly oxidized, medium roast, and I said I would like to get some of that next season, please. So spring rolls around, and it turns out that the sun processed the leaves in a much more, in a way that's much more akin to high mountain tea. So it was lightly oxidized, and I tasted it, and I was like, this is not what I tasted last season. Would you roast it for me? And being the polite Taiwanese traditional person that he is, said sure. He didn't say no, that's not a good idea because it's not oxidized well enough. So he went ahead and roasted it significantly, and it turned particularly bitter. So all I could do was pony up my own cash and pay for the tea because I requested it to be roasted. And I put it in a ceramic urn and left it for many years, 12 to be exact as of now. Yes, over 12, it'll be 12, well, let's say 12 and a half years. And after 5 years or so, I think starting the 6th year, I would take it out of the urn and bring it to my tea mentor, Lisa, and she would just put it in the oven and lightly bake it at 70 or 80 degrees Celsius for a few hours to remove the moisture, kind of stale flavor that naturally happens if you're aging tea, and in a natural way, like in a ceramic urn. So slowly but surely, it wasn't really changing much until at least 8 years in, but then in the last 2 or 3 years, that bitter quality really mellowed out, and a lot of sweetness came forth, and a little bit of complexity, fruity complexity, along with the classic aged quality, which is kind of hard to describe, but it will remind you of going into like an old, like, domestic library, not a public library, like a house that's over 100 years old. If they have a small library, lots of books in it, it has that kind of old house, old book, aromatic quality to it, and then a whole bunch of flavor notes as well, which I'm really ready to taste. This has cooled down quite significantly. I brewed it. This is a pot that was given to me almost 30 years ago by a farmer in Lugu. You got to be careful when you compliment people on things here, because then they're prone to just give it to you. So I had to take this as a gift. I thought it was appropriate to use for this occasion where we're celebrating being in tea over time. So this is about 180 milliliter teapot. I did the standard 1:15 ratio, starting at a little over, I did 70 seconds on the first brew, down to 60 seconds on the second brew after the leaves reconstituted, back up to 70 on the third brew, 80 on the fourth brew, and 90 seconds on the fifth brew. Let's have a sip. It's a very enigmatic flavor profile. There's sweet, there's tanginess. That's one of the things that happens with aged tea. It'll slowly get this kind of tangy fruit quality to it. The post-oxidation process, I should use that term. That's what happens with aged tea. It oxidizes slowly but surely. Anybody that's into Pu-erh, that's the whole thing about raw Pu-erh tea, is that you need to, age those cakes for 10, 20, 30 more years, and they really transform over time. Yeah, there's the quality of graham crackers comes to my mind every time I smell the brewed leaves. I don't know if I've ever actually worked with graham as a flour. I believe it's a type of wheat flour that still has the wheat germ in it. But it has that kind of toasted grains. That would be a more general way to put it. And now it's not really smelling like the old books in the library very much at all. But I definitely got that when it was the first brews and the leaves were wafting hot, steaming, in other words. I'm going to go back to the first brew. Tastes pretty strong to me. I'm kind of revisiting the acknowledgement, the realization that teapots really do make a difference, whichever teapot you use. I used this is the first time I used this pot for brewing these leaves, and it tastes significantly different than when I brewed it a couple days ago in a different pot. I think I like to use clay pots for roasted teas. I like to use porcelain pots for unroasted high mountain oolongs and green teas. Clay pots do have their own personality, and that's where the variation comes in. There's a lot of factors. It's the thickness of the ceramic, it's the shape of the pot, and the quality of the clay, as they say. I'm more into just acknowledging the shape of the pot and the size of the pot and maybe the thickness of the actual ceramic. What I was told many, many years ago is that a quality teapot is thin-walled so that it can adjust in heat with the brewings, so it doesn't cook the leaves in between brewings. I think that makes sense to me. This is not a thick and it's not a thin. I would call it a medium. It's a handmade pot. So with roasted teas, I kind of like the feel or the idea of using a pot that has a little more substance to it to keep the heat in and to really bring those flavors out in a deep roasted tea. Okay, I'm going to keep moving here. One of the things I want to acknowledge is I really love the color of the brewed tea. It's just it's super clear, transparent, and that's post-oxidation, the coloration. It was roasted initially, and I need to acknowledge that, but I don't remember it being roasted very much. In fact, I'm almost sure he roasted it once, and I went to taste it, and we decided we're not going to touch this again because it just became really bitter. It would only get more bitter if he roasted it again. So I would call it a light roast when it was made. There's this kind of, it's a little bit like, a couple months ago we shared Ui Tie Guan Yin, and it has that kind of Yencha character where it's like this really thin layer of confection-sugar. That's my experience. There's some very sweet but kind of quickly passing sweet quality to the palate. And then something grainy and finishing with a tanginess in my experience. Now I'm getting a bit of the old book aspect in the aftertaste. I find it really soothing. There's something very integrated and balanced about there is a bitter aftertaste still, for sure. It's clean and a little bit of astringency. My tongue is slightly dry, but not too dry. Yeah, that preserved fruit, maybe, plums perhaps. I feel like I'm stretching it there because it's not so fruity. There's just a tangy element there. Oh, pretty big difference between the first and the last. I think I like it more and more as we go. Wow, I'm gonna get really lifted from doing this quick. I'll mention another subjective thing. I can't prove it in any way, shape, or form. I feel like the more processed oolong teas, and particularly full leaf teas, leaves that are fully grown or close to maturity, the caffeine and other compounds are more easily digestible the more the leaves are processed. So even though they say that roasted tea has less caffeine, in my 30 years of drinking oolong tea, I feel like I feel the caffeine effect more quickly. And with high mountain teas, there's a different kind of stimulation. I feel like it has to do with those more original and unbroken down compounds that are hitting our whole endocrine system, liver, and stimulating organs and circulation a little bit more than just caffeine, which I think, in my experience, is more readily digested in a more processed tea like this. Most of this processing would be the post-oxidation process, but heavily roasted teas, I feel similar. Like right now, I feel like I'm talking fast. Okay, let's calm down. Satisfying. I find it quite satisfying. I think it'll be nice as we go into winter, kind of this warm, aged, creamy, strange profile of aged oolong tea leaves. The leaves were big to begin with. They're nice chunky nuggets. And this was a young crop of tea. As I said, I think definitely within the first couple years of it being planted, within the first 2 or 3 harvests, I should say. They were probably over 2 years old. But going into their prime with a lot of life, those early plots of tea are prized here in general. This is the composite of all 5 brews. Much warmer. So aged oolong, it is a thing, particularly here in Taiwan. It's not a big thing. It takes a long time to make, so to speak. And it's usually a higher shelf tea. It's more expensive because people put time into it. And it's by definition rare. There's less of it around. Tea farms aren't into taking their tea and putting it on a shelf for many, many years. They're farmers. They want and need often to sell their produce on a seasonal basis. Play with the ratio. If it seems a bit intense for you, just use less leaves. I do recommend using boiling water. Don't brew for too long at one time, especially if you're doing it Kung Fu style. Keep it around 1 minute. So that was, I only went from 1 minute to up to 1 minute 30 seconds over 5 or 6 brews. Okay, thank you very much. 10th year anniversary of the Tea Club. We're not going anywhere. We have a nice, fresh batch of tea to balance this one out, starting our 11th year. December 2025 will be the first edition of our 11th year of the Eco Cha Tea Club. Thank you again for being with us. We'll see you next month.